Now, Maura, at the end of the break, we had been talking about some different types of disclosures, some types of recourse in the criminal context, as well as potential for tort claims if a partner instead of the government is the one disclosing your private communications. But there's the last scenario which I mentioned, which is texts that include intimate images, sexually explicit images. If someone sends a partner a sexual photo of themselves, when we're talking about reasonable expectation of privacy, do we need to say, this is for your eyes only, or is it implied that that is private? And what are the consequences for a person who discloses an image like that their partner sent them without their partner's consent, Maura?
So it's always good to make your intentions explicit. So it doesn't hurt to say these are for your eyes only. But when we're in the realm of intimate images, there are statutes and regulations and laws that prohibit this kind of what's often called revenge porn, things like that. So yes, both in the U.S. and in Canada, there can be repercussions for doing that with disclosing images without the other person's consent.
Irina, is there anything you want to add to that from a legal or ethical perspective about this issue of non consensual disclosure of intimate images? Which, to
Yeah,
be clear,
a
we
couple of
jumped off of this conversation about the Jonah Hill situation. There's no allegation at all that Jonah Hill did anything like that, just to clarify.
Right. I think it's interesting that we are more concerned about the release of intimate images than the release of intimate details expressed in language. For many of us, I think words can be as revealing and make us feel as vulnerable as an image would. But societally, we just haven't thought about language that way. I would also say I would push back a little bit on the notion that in the US, we have less expectations of privacy. I think all of that is very much in flux. So, in terms of laws, I live in California, and Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution invokes the protection of privacy. So it's not that we haven't thought about it. How it gets expressed then in laws keeps changing, in part because people are understanding better what's happening with their information. I think online, the ecosystem has been so opaque that a lot of folks just don't have a sense of what might be happening with their communications. And if you think, for example, about writing text versus putting something down on a piece of paper, right? There's something about the act of writing it down on a piece of paper that I think, which, how many of us even do these days anymore, but it used to kind of make you aware of the fact that that piece of paper could be handed to somebody else, right? And there were certain things you might not have written down. I think texts feel very ephemeral. They feel more like a spoken conversation. And so people don't think about it with the same kind of caution that they would in terms of other kinds of writing. So our norms and our understanding and our laws are all developing to catch up with this.
Now, Maura, one thing that stood out to me from that comment is that we view our texts as ephemeral, and quite literally, you can turn on ephemeral texting. You can turn on self-deleting texting. If someone you're communicating with has that function turned on, their text delete every 24 hours or every 7 days, how does that impact our understanding of expectations of privacy? If, say, the other person in the conversation is screenshotting these texts that they know get automatically deleted.
Well, that's the key point. I may be deleting on my end, but that doesn't mean you're deleting on your end, and you very well can can screenshot it or forward it or whatever. And therein lies some of the issue where the analysis is once it's sort of out of my control, once I've sent it and it goes to Arena, I don't have much control at that point over her phone and what she decides to do with it. And the law, it can be squishy in that area. So, for example, for certain social media, many courts have said, it's like
Right.
screaming out the window if you
Right.
put
Yeah.
social media.
We've got to go
So
to commercial break now, but we will be right back.